Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is our final webinar in our Getting Started with Horses in Maryland series to celebrate October, which is Maryland Horse Month. We're very happy to partner with both the Equerry and the Maryland Horse Council to bring these programs to you throughout this month. And I think we have a great topic to wrap up with. We're excited for all of you that are joining us live. We hope that you will use the chat feature to ask lots and lots of questions as we go throughout this presentation. And those of you that might be listening to this on the recording, thank you for listening to us. And we hope that we're able to address a lot of your questions as well. My name is Jennifer Reynolds. I am the Extension Coordinator for Equine and Poultry Programs with the University of Maryland Extension. I will be helping out as host behind the scenes today. And I'm very excited for the speakers that we have today, but I'm actually going to introduce someone who will introduce them to you. And many of you in Maryland particularly will be familiar with Crystal Pickett from her work and in owning and being the editor of the Equerry, which has certainly been a major part of the lives of all horse folks here in Maryland. So we're happy to have her be a part of this today. And because of her experiences, she is going to introduce our main presenters. So Crystal, I'll let you go ahead and do that now.
Thank you, Jennifer. As Jennifer said, my name is Crystal Brummy Pickett, and I am currently the acting secretary of the Maryland Horse Council, one of the co-hosts, co-sponsors of today's seminar. And I am also the founder and the former publisher of the Equerry, also a sponsor. And the Equerry is now owned by the Maryland Horse Council. It is also my pleasure to introduce today's guest speakers, my good friends, real estate agent Tracy Diamond and farm credit loan officer Keith Wills. I first got to know each of them as clients when they each placed their first ads in the Equerry a little over 25 years ago, and each became sponsors of the Horse Council over time. And over that time, we all became good friends. They've known me through all my last names. They've each been to at least one of my weddings. And more importantly, because of them, I have my farm today. Because of Tracy and Keith working together as a team. Even when I thought that I wouldn't be able to get the farm, they knew differently. They worked together and they made sure I was able to get this farm. There are a lot of very good horse farm realtors advertising in the Equerry, but in my opinion, Tracy is one of the best. Full disclosure, since selling the Equerry, I now work with Tracy, helping her with her back office and marketing, so I feel like I should give you full disclosure. Now, when it comes to Keith and Farm Credit, there just are no other ag lenders, so no one can compare to Farm Credit. But mine is not the only story that illustrates Tracy and Keith's experience and depth of knowledge in this field. Before I turn the seminar over to our moderators and our guests, I'd like to share with you the experience of a young trainer named Abby Gibbon. Jennifer, could you pull up the listing, please?
Yes, I would be happy to do that.
Okay. In 2015, Tracy listed this 50-plus acre horse farm with a 100-year-old house on it in Mount Airy. And Tracy, when she's got those images up, what can you share with us about this listing? I don't think they're up yet, though, are they?
I'm getting there.
Oh, okay, here they are. Excellent. So Tracy, what can you share with us about the challenges of this listing?
I had to unmute myself.
Okay.
That was my favorite picture, actually, but you can even see the clever photography helping disguise the work that was needed at this farm. And I had the listing for several months and really did have a tough time securing the right buyer for it. The property certainly lent itself to horses, gently rolling, nice open acreage, but unimproved. It really required a buyer that had some vision. And Abby, I won't go too far forward, but she had that vision and energy and drive and the right lender that could get her to where she is today, which the farm, I wish we had some after photos, because what she farm is
We'll
fabulous.
have to show her website later.
Yes. Great idea.
So Keith handled, or Farm Credit rather, handled the financing. And we have a little bit of that experience in Abby's own words. So if Jennifer can switch to Abby's story, then you all can hear a little bit about that, and then we'll get on to everybody's presentations and questions. But this is a little bit of inspiration because to me, Abby represents every young girl that dreams of owning a horse farm. So
I'll be right with you.
Keith, is somebody going to crop that corn soon?
I don't know. Well, if I turn to my right, I can still see it standing. So that's the back. That's the backyard. So that's what's on the backyard out there.
All right, here's Abby.
Can everyone hear it?
No, no volume on my side.
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, it's on mute. When you hovered over the thing, it's still on mute. There you go. Unmute. Okay.
Oh, is that better?
No, one more clip.
Okay.
It's sound for me, but you can see at least some of the farm and what they've been able to do.
We'll put this link up for everybody to get to it later. How's that?
That'll work.
So we'll turn this over to our moderators, Dr. Amy Burke, and back to Jennifer Reynolds, and our guests, Tracy Diamond and Keith Wills. Thank you very much, everyone.
All right, so again, yeah, thank you so much for that. Sorry about that video not having the volume. It was working on my end, but that was one we had not practiced. So I think the main thing that we wanted to start out with was what a lot of us who are maybe at the very beginning stages of thinking that it might be nice to have a farm of our own and are kind of wondering, where do we even get started, and how is that first beginning of searching and the process of purchasing a farm different from that of purchasing a home, for instance?
Question for me?
Yes, Tracy, please start us off.
just making sure. Well, there are many differences. I'd say I can probably boil it down to three major ones. First is you have to be prepared that if you bought your townhouse, you probably didn't have to do a lot of research, legwork, and investigating into the property itself. So be prepared to invest a little bit of time and be willing to take the time to do that, because it's worthwhile. Certainly to not make a mistake in buying the wrong property. Secondly, and probably, it is the primary step in this whole process, is securing the proper lender that can handle an agricultural property. And even if it's not truly agricultural at this time, or a smaller acreage piece that is actually a residential property, they are a partner. Your lender is going to be a partner that is going to get you across the finish line so you can actually own the property, but secondly, be there for you as you may need to make improvements. So the first step in this whole process is to connect with that lender and provide them the information they need in order to pre-qualify you. Because sometimes, and I'd say if you're thinking about and dreaming about this farm, but no, it's out of reach for a couple of years, that's okay. Start the process now. Get together with a lender. Farm Credit, Mid-Atlantic Farm Credit just really can't be beat for this type of purchase. And they can help guide you. I won't want to go into what Keith, is likely going to talk about, but in preparing for the purchase, because sometimes it may be a year or two that you need to prepare with your tax return, how that's going to appear to a lender, how you put your savings in place, where you put those savings, your credit score, which is so critical these days. So that's the second biggest difference. The third, I'd say, and not to toot my own horn, but I think it's important to align yourself with a realtor that understands horse properties. There, some things we'll be covering that you'll understand that someone without that experience may not guide you into areas you need to research or what you need to know, what we need to find out about the property. So again, I think those are the three big differences.
Very cool. What would you say are, or what would you say is one of the first things that you should do or be considering if I'm someone looking for a farm? And is it the total acreage, or as you were saying, how the property is laid out, or how, what sort of the infrastructure, like what is there? Are there things that matter more than other things in determining if a property might work as a horse property?
Well, I think the first question is, what is your intended use of the property? Is this to run a business, an income producing business that's horse related? Is it strictly for personal use? Because all of that's going to tie in, is it something, if you're looking to build a business over time, is it going to provide you the space and zoning that's going to allow for a growing business? So I think the first question is just knowing what your end plan is for the property.
So as you mentioned zoning, what kinds of zoning things, especially since we're in Maryland and we're talking primarily to Maryland attendees here in this presentation, what would matter in terms of zoning? I think that's something that a lot of people don't even realize they might need to consider.
Sure, and that is a big one. And I circle back again to the lender. I've seen it time and time again, and now have learned over the years that many people will focus on a property that may not necessarily be a large one. Let's just use a 10-acre property, for example. They plan to use it for personal use, so they think that this is going to be, I can use my local bank or lender. They get down the road and find out, oh, guess what? It's zoned agricultural. Well, that's wonderful. You're going to use it for agricultural use. You get a benefit of reduced property taxes, but your lender can't do it because they finance residential properties. So that zoning, if you don't learn that early on, what type of zoning there is at the property, the lending process could stop you. Then, of course, back to what I said earlier, if your intended use of the property includes business, maybe one of the family members also has a business that they want to somewhat run out of the property, your zoning is going to be critical, because you might find that you can't do what you plan to do if it's not zoned properly.
I know that in a lot of the work that we do outside of this topic, that zoning does come up quite a bit, where people have not looked into the zoning ahead of time and then found that there were issues with maybe what they want to do or the exact kind of plans they had for a property, or other future uses of a property based on the zoning. So we had a question come in on the chat that says, when you say be prepared for investigative work on the property, what does that generally entail?
Well, there are phases of the process where there are formal inspections, but even before getting to that point, some of the legwork that you can do in advance, if you identify a property that's come on the market and before you even want to take the step to go see it, what we were just talking about, check the zoning of the property, make sure it can accommodate, again, your plans, because this property might be on the right acreage and the right location. Everything about it is ideal, but there's a homeowners association, for example, and that homeowners association may not allow for any kind of agricultural use. Also, investigate if there are any easements on the property. You may find that your dreams of trail riding on your own farm and building trails through the 50 acres of woods that's on this farm are not allowable because of a forest conservation easement that may restrict that use. It could be as simple as a shared driveway on a property. That shared driveway, you should ask if there's any document in place that would identify the use and maintenance of that driveway. It might restrict larger, tractor trailers, and you may plan to have horses shipping in and out of your property for your boarding business. So, researching easements you can do in advance. Some of that can be online yourself with the county in public record information. Hopefully the listing itself and the agents involved can find those documents for you so you have a chance to review them.
That is helpful. There is really quite a lot of research going into this. We had another comment come in. Speaking of reduced taxes, that falls into the investigative work. It's not a given that you'll get a tax break. There are guidelines that need to be met to get that tax break. Is there anything about that you would like to add?
Well, that's it's a tricky question, because to my knowledge, there's no hard and fast rule. Each county is going to consider the property as whether or not it qualifies for the agricultural taxing. It's something you would have to petition your county for through the assessments office. If this property is already agriculturally assessed for your lower property taxes, that's fabulous, as long as you're going to continue the agricultural use. Because what happens if a property is in agricultural use and assessed agriculturally that you're purchasing, but you've decided that maybe you're not going to start your farm operation for another 5 years for whatever reason, there would be an agricultural transfer tax that is paid at settlement, and that's negotiated whether the buyer or seller pays that. Typically, we will see the buyer paying it, because the buyer is the one that controls that future use, whether it's going to continue agricultural. Obviously, if the property is already in ag use, I'd encourage you to keep it that way. That might mean leasing the property to a farmer or so until you can get your own operation going.
That is, interesting and really good information to know. We'll ask this of you, Tracy, and maybe Crystal, you can chime in as someone who did buy a horse property. But when you're looking at a property with the forecasted idea of having horses on that property, is there anything that would come up about that would be sort of a deal breaker, like the property itself? What would be something that you'd be like, yeah, no, this is just not going to work? Are there any of those kinds of things that are more overarching, or is that really just a very specific and individual sort of thing?
Well, I'm sure Crystal has plenty to say about that too.
I think that's probably an individual thing, don't you think, Tracy?
I do, and I think it goes back to again, your big picture plan. If you want to have a property that can accommodate 10 horses, and you're looking at a 10-acre property thinking, well, that may just work. This may just work out. But 8 of those acres are encumbered by, a wetland area or so, then, it's not going to work. So I think knowing the amount of acreage, usable acreage you're going to need for your operation is very important. So you're barking up the right tree. You're not looking at properties that are, just not going to work.
For me, my ideal property was one that had not been set up for horses yet. I wanted an old dairy farm, because I wanted being the control freak that I am, I wanted to set it up the way I wanted it set up. And I didn't want it to have to kind of work with somebody else's idea of how they wanted it set up. And I knew I didn't want a ring. I'm a fox hunter. I knew I didn't want that maintenance. That wasn't part of my wheelhouse. So I wanted an old dairy farm, and I got one. So, and that's what worked for me. So I think everybody is different, and it does depend upon if you have a business plan for your farm or not.
So it sounds like, yes, truthfully, having a clear idea of your ultimate intended use and how you want to proceed with that property is going to make the biggest difference in the kind of properties that you might consider. Cool.
Absolutely.
Let me see. The next question on our list was sort of along those lines in terms of, you know, are there deal breakers, or are there certain things that you think absolutely have to be a part of a property? Like, are there things that if someone's looking at a horse property, you would definitely want to see in place or see available, and trying to pick out those kinds of properties to even show them?
Well, I think, again, I hate to keep going back to what I've said earlier, but really, if you have to come to terms with yourself and your plans and what you're willing to do, because you're willing to take on project-wise. So establishing your plan with whether it's your spouse or just, you know, thinking inside yourself, am I willing to take on a project and build something out? Am I realistically going to be happy if I can only accommodate 2 or 3 horses? Or do I really know that down the road I may be retiring horses and gathering a few more, or maybe take on a few boarders? So it's expensive to buy and sell. So I would say, you know, try to really project out long term what your plans are.
Tracy,
So
would you say that it also has to do with what they do with horses, because not everybody does the same thing with horses. You can have somebody that bubble wraps their horses. They're in individual paddocks, turn out for only an hour or so a day. They don't need much land, but they want that arena. They want that indoor. They could be on a pocket somewhere in a residential area and have like no turnout, but somebody else would be freaked out at that. So, I mean,
no,
it's so different.
Yeah, having your again, your plan, your goals, what you do if you're, you know, are your horses pasture kept? Are they not? How much, realistically, how much land are you going to need? And again, back to the point just earlier, if it's not usable land, it's, you know, it's worthless to you. So you've got to be, you know, you have to account for that. And that's where, you know, different phases throughout the process, you might have the opportunity to bring in contractors, you know, getting aligned with some contractors if you do in fact think you're going to take on the project of fencing and barns and arena building and that kind of thing. Having some of those folks lined up and having done your homework so you are comfortable with those contractors in advance, that's going to also benefit, you know, time-wise, because sometimes you don't have a lot of time to do this homework.
Location also based on what your end plan is, because if you want to have a lesson stable, then it doesn't matter how good the deal is on 100 acres out in far western Maryland. If there's no client base,
Oh, in there,
you know, yeah, you can't, no matter how great the deal is for the farm. If there's no client base, you're not going to be able to run your business.
oh, absolutely. That's come up a number of times.
So if someone was approaching you, you know, and saying, hey, here I am, I'm ready. It's, you know, this time of us being cooped up, or not, you know, periods of time not being able to go see our horses under quarantine that we've recently experienced. I'm one of those people. I'm ready to start looking to have my horses at my own property and do that. What kinds of information would you want to get from them? It sounds like start off, like you said, a clear idea of what they want to do. What else would you want to get from that person when they first come to you saying, I'm ready to start looking, I want you to help me?
Sure, absolutely. And again, Keith is the first step, that getting that financing secured, your hands are tied until you have that lined up. So that would be the number one. Within that research of, preparing for the loan process, it would also include your current housing. So if you have a home that you own now and you need to sell that home, in order to make this work, to get the financing, then by all means, get working on that too. It's free advice from your realtor. Get your realtor out there, get that house ready to roll. If you have the opportunity to go ahead and put it on the market, get it sold. Maybe you can live with a friend or family member, some temporary situation, do it. You're going to be in a better position. So, I think financing, number one, knowing what you want, right up there, and then being prepared to jump, because depending on the market, and even not always depending on the market, that dream property might be right around the corner, and you could miss out if you're not ready.
Great. That's all amazingly useful information. It's just fascinating to me to learn some of this stuff too. And I'm just so appreciative to you guys for being here to talk to us about this. We have a question come in that says, what questions should buyers ask potential realtors that they are interviewing to make sure the agent really understands purchasing horse farms?
Very good question. I'm trying to recall the questions that I've been
Well,
asked.
first of all, if they show you a horse farm, what shoes are they wearing?
And I have so many stories about being at my own listing to show it, to demonstrate it for a buyer and their agent. And the agent comes in their high heels, they're dressed to the nines, and they wait in the car while I show the property. And I find it so amusing that buyers don't always see that it's critical to have someone that at least understands horses and farms. They might not have them now, maybe they did in their past, or maybe they've just been experienced in selling them. But yeah, I'd ask them their own personal experience. It's okay. It's a personal process, buying a property. So you really have to connect with that agent, because you're going to be working with them at the very minimum several months. So again, I try to understand their experience with horse farms and properties. What has their experience, volume wise been? Did they just get in the business? Have they sold one farm, 100 farms? And again, what familiarity do they have with the area that you are looking in? Because it makes no sense to work with an agent for any reason if they don't know the area where you want to be.
That was a great question. And yeah, I think yeah, definitely something that more folks should be considering as they're looking at properties or making those sorts of decisions. Again, just a reminder to our folks listening, please go ahead and put any questions in the chat. We'll make sure that they get asked. Before we move on, what is the minimum amount of usable pasture land you need per horse, assuming the horses on it will be out half a day for turnout? Oh, that's sort of a...
That's a loaded question.
That's an it depends question too, even for us with extension that we get. And obviously it depends on the type of horse, the type of work they're doing. Your zoning, it can matter a lot, because in some areas zoning is going to require a certain number of acres in order to even have larger livestock animals like horses here in Maryland on it. But we usually say about 2 acres per horse. If they're out all the time, you can do a little less depending on their turnout situation and how you're managing. But obviously, the fewer acres you have, the more management you need to maintain to keep those
and
horses
Jennifer,
happy and healthy.
Quality of the pastures is important too. You could turn out 100 acres of dirt, that's nothing. So it's
Exactly.
at the pastures as well, which is all up your alley.
Yeah,
So,
we have a lot of information on pasture management for people on smaller and larger pastures, and we have lots of other webinars recorded on our YouTube channel that you're welcome to look at in learning about how to manage and maintain both smaller and larger acreages. But that's definitely, yeah, another sort of it depends question.
hey,
Question came in.
yeah,
Go
that's a
ahead.
very interesting question that just came in, which is that's a very interesting question. Should we expect the agents to have or define the information on zoning? So is that an agent thing, or is that a prospective buyer thing? Who does that homework? Who does that due diligence?
Boy, that's another, it's a great question, actually. And the answer is going to be typically there's a combination there. Ultimately, the buyer is responsible for this information, for getting this information. And I say that because I think it's extremely helpful to have an agent that knows the direction to point you in at the very least. And it's great if they'll do some of that legwork for you, that's fine. But again, ultimately, you are responsible for verifying that information. And I recommend and always do recommend that the buyers do their homework along with the agent is fine. You know, share that information with one another and discuss it. But I'd say don't rely on the agent to know, you know, where the information is or to get it and relay it properly, I guess I'd say.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of people, as you were saying, if it's an agent that's maybe not as familiar with agricultural properties, that just says, oh, it's zoned agriculture, so obviously you can do whatever you want on it with animals, and doesn't realize that there might be other factors that come into play there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I think, is there anything else that you wanted to share about the buying or the searching for a property process with us, Tracy? We certainly, I mean, I know you'll be staying on, but before we give Keith some time to talk about financing, is there anything else you wanted to make sure that you hit on with this part of the presentation?
I think one last comment to make back to the finding information and knowing, you know, where to look and that sort of thing. University of Maryland, you know, through soil conservation. I mean, there are some great programs out there that provide all sorts of information. And there are a couple of websites, and I can see if I can figure out how to get them in the chat box, that where you can go for state and federal programs that are some are cost share.
We have that on the slide at the end, Tracy.
Oh, awesome. Okay, thank you,
Yeah,
Crystal.
we'll show that.
That's awesome, because there is so much wonderful information there that really can, it answers some of the questions you asked earlier, which you were probably involved, Jennifer, in preparing some of that information regarding acreage required and needed. And of course, the equerry is a resource that is fantastic. I go there all the time for not just myself personally, but certainly professionally. I send my buyers and sellers there when they're in need of contractors for the property, just on every level, you know, and if you don't see it in the publication, call them, email them, whatever you need to do, because I bet you someone in the office there can point you in a direction.
Tracy McKenna's on the call, and she's your girl in the equerry.
Yeah, she is. That's for sure. Yeah, she's great.
Thank you so much. Now, just to let everyone know, Tracy Diamond is going to stay on, and certainly if you have any other questions relating to that part, the hunting for and purchasing of a property, please go ahead and still ask those questions here. She's not going away, but we are going to give a little bit of time now to Keith Wills with Mid-Atlantic Farm Credit to talk about that financing piece to this whole process. And as Tracy was saying, that's sort of the first thing you need to do, is figure out how you're going to pay for things, how you're going to find those loans and that money to put towards this purchase. So Keith, I'll turn it over to you to let you share.
All right, thank you very much. Give me a minute here. Let's see if this We did it in a practice round. Let's see if this works in a live round as far as sharing the screen and getting the presentation up here. Okay, do you all have, is that up now? Do you have that? Good.
Yes,
Okay, very good. All right, basically one of the couple things, this is going to be kind of a high level, I guess, overview on a lot of the financing side of it, of what I want to go over. But I wanted to thank Amy and Jennifer, the Equerry and the Maryland Horse Council for inviting me here today to talk a little about this and hopefully help some folks out on maybe taking a little bit of that mystery out of what's behind how to purchase that property, how to make this happen. So what I wanted to do was just to go over real quick, but I wanted to talk about how to start the horse business, resources, both physical attributes of the farm and resources and tools for you as possibly starting your business. And I'm looking at this as you're buying a property that you're going to be buying this to start, maybe whether it's a boarding business, training, whatever that may be from that aspect. That's what a lot of this quick presentation will go over. How to get the loan, and then some other, a little bit more information on some other resources here for you. So, as Tracy mentioned, first thing she mentioned, get yourself organized, get your information together. That's key, I think, in putting together your ideas, your thoughts as to what you want to do. You've worked with your realtor, you found your dream property. This is it. This is the one that you've always wanted. Okay, now you've had this idea in mind. You want to start a boarding operation. Let's just go there. How are you going to do that? What are you going to do? Okay, this is your dream. Now, you're coming to me to invest in your dream. So sell me on your dream. That's what I'm asking you to help me do that. All the information that I'm going to ask for you to put together, to help me put together, so you can realize your dream. Again, when I say sell me on it, you're asking me to be a silent business partner in a sense. And you want me to stay silent because if it doesn't quite work out exactly the way, unfortunately, well, we sometimes a lender can get vocal at times, perhaps. That's not the goal, but that is reality on this. So let's get those ideas together. And that's going to be your financial information. And I'll go over that a little bit more. We have some slide on that. Doing your due diligence on that property. Tracy mentioned that. She talked about that. Doing that background research. What's the zoning on the property? What are the capabilities of the property? What are your goals with that property? I know everything that I want to talk about, I think Tracy mentioned already once or twice. So I'm reiterating that because it is extremely important. Understanding the business income side of it and expense side of it. I have some information at the end of this presentation on it. I've talked to a number of people that I've helped start out operations, buy farms, do things. And I've always been curious, I said, what is one thing that you wish you knew more about when you started that you have figured out now after being in several years? Part of it is understanding the financial aspects of it. I went into this because I love horses. I love doing this. This is the aspect. The financial side of it, that's the last thing I want to do. That's what's done at the end of the day, anything like that. So understanding, where your cash flow is coming from. What are the expenses? What are the all-in expenses going to be? Many times, and I say many, I'm going to say a lot. Everybody knows that ever has been involved in the horse business, know there are only three expenses in owning a horse. That's it. It's only three. Hay, feed, and then bedding. That's it. That's all there is. Everybody knows that, right? No? Okay. This is very strange. I'm used to seeing smiles and faces. I see a couple over here, but you can't see anything. All you see is a flat computer screen. So anyway, Yeah, that's what I'm told. You'd be surprised how many times I hear that. But anyway, so enough on that part of it. But what I want to do is really understand that for you to get that knowledge, to understand what you're really going into. Tracy, man, this might be a couple years project of getting everything together, understanding what you want to do, how you want to go about doing that. And it doesn't happen overnight. So be prepared to put some time into this. One of the biggest ones, and it's not in this slide, but it's in another one that says the mission statement. Okay, but that's part of your business plan. If you've never written a business plan, it can be somewhat of a daunting task, I guess. It doesn't have to be. You've probably already got a lot of it up in your head already. You already know what you want to say and what you want to do and how you're going to do it. But I don't know that. Again, I'm going back to that. Sell me on that. That business plan is your written ideas of what you want to do so I can better understand it. Because while we may be talking, we could be talking we could be at a Starbucks, Panera, at my office, whatever, wherever we are, we're talking. I'm going to be taking notes down. I'm going to be writing notes down about what you want to do. But I'll be honest, there are things I'm going to miss, things that you might want to tell me and plan to tell me ahead of time, but you don't tell me. And maybe you're in your plan, you're going to have all that information. So it's extremely important. That mission statement, to me, that's one of the key elements. That tells me that's your big goal. That's what do you want to do? I want to be the best at doing whatever it is. I want to provide this to whatever. That's that one statement that tells me what's your plan, what's your operation. And believe me when I said, I've had people come in and say, okay, I just bought 45 acres of ground. What should I do with it? I don't know. I can't tell you what to do with that. This is where getting all those ideas organized, putting that information together, put it in that written format, that's what a business plan is. The other side of this, on the other segment in your business plan, is that marketing section in there. Okay, as I think Crystal mentioned on one of her comments, you could have the greatest boarding operation or farm, but if it's out in the middle of who knows where, if it's a 2-hour drive, 3 hours or more drive from where your client base is going to be, it's no good. So on that business plan, look at this to say, what I found over time, and we looked at, and I think Tracy mentioned the location of the property as well. I found that basically somewhere between 30 to 45 minutes from your target client base, that's what I found. That most people, they don't want to drive any further than that. I mean, I boarded my horses for 25 years at a farm. So I'd get home from work, rush home, change, and go drive to the farm. Did I want to drive an hour and a half or something? No, I didn't. I wanted to get there quickly. And for me, it was only about a 25-minute drive. So I was right under that window where I wanted to be. And that worked out for 25 years. I probably could have bought the farm with as much board as I paid, but that was the plan, because I knew what the commitment was, and having a farm, it was easier for me to be able to just board them somewhere. In doing that, building your farm resources. Okay. And what I mean by resources, those are both physical resources, and those are also the resources, your tools, how you're going to run this, how are you going to put this together. Some really great tools for you as a business person. And I don't know whether you have the links in another slide or not, but they're in here. One of them that I really like, and it's been around for a number of years, and I think it's changed names, and they're calling it right now, it's the farm business, the University of Maryland. I used to call it the Small Farm Workbook, the Small Farm Business Plan. It's changed over time. It's one of the best tools, and I give it out to a lot of people and send this link to a lot of people. It's a big document, but it really helps you to put together and organize your thoughts, your ideas, your business plan, to put that together. It gives you an example, a space to write it, and that format on how that all should flow and come together. And that's a great document to do that. The other one is the Beginning Farmer's Guidebook, another great resource tool of a lot of information in there, exactly as we have on there, as to how that's supposed to, for you to refine, develop, implement your farm, things to watch out for, things to look at. We also have out there a webinar recording on writing a farm business plan. So it's a little bit more of a live document on something like that. And remember that your business plan, it's not carved in stone. It's a living document. It's going to change over time. What you set out to do, your path may change over time, and you go in a different direction. And that may be just how you might want to update that plan. But in the beginning, that plan is the document that tells me what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, where you're going to do it, who are you going to be your clients, how are you going to attract them, what are you going to do? I mentioned, on that marketing side of it, we've all been in the tax shop, and we know where the bulletin board is in the back of the tax shop, and there are about 1,000 business cards all stapled on that little bulletin board. It's probably maybe a 3x2 bulletin board, just a little tiny space. And usually there's a tear off sheet on there. It has on something like that. It'll have big black letter, big bold letters. And then there's the phone numbers written about 20 times at the bottom, and you tear the phone number off. If that's your marketing plan, think again. You really want to start and look at some more, do a little more research and work on this. And that's what I wanted to talk about there. We mentioned, I started talking about these are the resources, the ideas on how to understand the business side of it. Physical resources, Tracy mentioned them, a lot of them already, and so did Crystal in comments and all. What's the property offer? Crystal mentioned she wanted a dairy farm. She didn't want a riding ring. She knew she didn't want, that wasn't what she wanted. Other people, if you're planning, let's say, a boarding facility, well, for those of you that knew Malcolm Comer, going way back when, he did some original fact sheets, and he did I believe it was the first equine census, if I'm not mistaken. One of the items that stuck with me out of that census was that the number one activity that people in this area like to do with horses is trail ride. So if you're in the middle of, say you've got a nice 50-acre farm, and that's great, and you've got some trails and pathways and cut through it and everything, that's great. But people ultimately want to go someplace else. So having access to trail facilities, being able to do that. That's why I stayed at one farm for 25 years, because the back end of the farm was Pretty Boy Reservoir up in northern Baltimore County. We had hours and hours and hours of trails to ride, and didn't have to cross them again. That's what I like to do. That's why I was there. That's one of the number one activities people like to do. That indoor riding arena, again, fall's coming, winter's coming. If you've got people that are boarding at your facility, they want to be able to ride in the wintertime. You need to have that indoor arena. So those are those physical attributes. Those are the resources of what you want to have on something for your facility. Okay. And I hope these slides are advancing, because they're not on my computer. So I don't know I don't know what you're saying. Okay.
They are. They're working, Keith. They're working fine.
Perfect. Just want to make sure. Okay. How to get that loan. Okay. Real quick, been mentioned, Mid-Atlantic Farm Credit. This is the map of our footprint of where we are. If you're around one of these offices, give them a call. Go out to the website. You can see that. I'm going to say the actual footprint's kind of an amoeba-shaped thing that we kind of go north, we go south, and, well, we go to the ocean. So I guess we can't go any further east, and we go out west, out into part of West Virginia, and all, things like that. Okay. Again, we talked about organizing yourself, getting that. So here's the basic information of what you're going to need for almost all lenders. Tracy mentioned that when you're looking at a farm property, not everybody's going to look at that. It's going to be able to do that for you. Maybe, depending upon the property, that another lender will be able to. Maybe they can sneak it through somehow or do something, but maybe not, more times not. Usually you'll find out that they can't do it somewhere around the time when the appraisal is done. And usually that comes as a panic call that we get and say, I need to close on this. I found out my lender can't do this. What do I do? How can you help me? And that's when we really start scrambling. But organizing your documents. Here's what I'm looking at. Here's what you're going to need. The business plan, again, key if you're starting a new business, if you're writing that up, selling me on that dream of yours. I need that. I need to understand that. Your balance sheet. What's a balance sheet? Real quick. It's just a listing of your assets and liabilities, what you own and what you owe. That's simply what it is. It's a formatted sheet that tells me that, and it tells me at the bottom line on that, kind of what do you have? What are your resources financially wise that'll help me to do the underwriting for the loan? 2 or 3 years of tax returns. What I'm looking at that's past history, so I can see where your income, where you are. How can we approve this? If you're looking at projections for a new business, these are part of this information that'll be part of your business plan. Those I want to see those too. Again, and I've seen a lot of projections, and I've seen people that say, that they're going to make, I don't even want to mention numbers or anything like that, but they're going to make more money than I've ever seen anyone boarding horses. And I know farms that have been in business for 20 and 30 years and aren't making these kind of returns, yet these people say that they are. I hate to blow holes in people's dreams and ideas, but sometimes that's the best thing I can do. I'm doing them a favor by really giving them reality and say, here's what I find over time, over 20 years of history. This is what's going to happen. This is where it's going to be. You say you're going to have 10 horses? Great. Okay. How many horses of your own do you have? I have 5. So you're going to be boarding 10 horses? No, I'll be boarding 5. Well, then why do you have, unless you're going to be paying board to yourself, why do you have 10 times that board number as far as your income? These are all the things, these are small things, but they recur over and over and over again, that what I've seen. Let's go back to this information checklist. Bank statements, again, just verification statements. So we know what we're working with. Asset verifications, stocks, mutual funds, retirement accounts, etc., things like that. Again, that's the background information that helps support what you've provided on that balance sheet. So we really have an idea and know what we have to work with. Pay stubs, if you have an existing business, your year-to-date P&L, profit and loss statement, and the balance sheets on that business, depending upon how you have it set up, you may not have a separate balance sheet. It could all be one. I'd highly recommend having a separate so you know what the assets of the farm are, but not everybody does it that way. And I have this bolded on a copy of your driver's license because it's the one document whenever I request it, it's always missed, but it's the only document out there that actually has your full name on it. So we know what to put on the loan paper. So we know what to put in our documents. Even your passport, for the most part, does not have your full name on it. That's the only document. Tracy mentioned this, the sales contract. You found the property, you've got a contract. Okay, I'm not quite sure how you may have gotten the contract without being pre-approved or pre-qualified from a lender, but maybe you did. If you haven't, that's okay. We can work with you and work through that pre-qualification, pre-approval process. We set a limit and you say, okay, you don't want to spend any more than this amount. We're looking at your resources, what you have. Down payment wise, you can afford this much of a loan. Here's what we have. So this is our number. This is what you'd be pre-approved for. We give you a pre-approval letter and that goes to your realtor. So you're going in, that gives you a great position when making an offer on contract. And I hope that Tracy would agree with me on that, and that information, that's what we're, and having that pre-approval that you're ready to go. She mentioned if you're not ready, you could miss that dream farm that could be right around the corner. If you're not ready, you could miss that. Things are moving really quickly now. Finishing up here a little bit, one of the things I mentioned was one of a resource that we have that Farm Credit's offering, and through Farm Credit University, actually, it's called AgBiz Masters. It's a financial kind of training business class. I know the university has classes like this. I'm not trying to take anything away from them. We're taking registrations through the 31st of this month on this for the next class on this. It's a 2-year class. And what it's doing, going through some of these areas This is year one. We're looking at, trends in agriculture, business, strategic business, preparing for your lender, the bank income, cash flow projections, and then you can, I don't need to read them to you. But one of the things on this program is you take this class. We do this. There is a fee for this class. It's one of the instructors is Dr. David Cole from Virginia Tech. Great professor. But you take the course, you pass the class, you let us know. We pay you your tuition back or reimburse you for your tuition. So we're paying you to take this class. And I've had nothing but great responses from individuals that have taken this. One of the goals out of this entire class, that is, you will come away with your finished business plan. So you will have a really good idea and a solid foundation for what you want to do going forward. Finishing up here, just a couple more resource information. Our Leader magazine, that's a publication that Farm Credit puts out. And I think Tracy's advertised, has put properties. We have a section in the back of that is nothing but real estate. And it's nothing but real estate from all around our footprint. Some more information on ways to check out different tools and resources we have out there. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Follow us out there. That's what I have. I've tried to boil down a lot of presentations into a few minutes. So thank you.
Thank you, Keith. So much information there.
Kind of rambled a little bit, but hopefully it stayed on course.
No, that's very good. Thank you. If you could maybe turn down your volume some, we're getting some feedback. But there we go. Yeah, thank you. If there's any questions, if there's anything specifically for Keith, or if you have questions for Tracy, again, please put them in the chat.
I have a quick comment, question for Keith.
Go ahead.
It's very common for us to find a property that checks 4 out of 5 boxes. And let's say the 5th box is the indoor arena. And Keith, could you touch on how you can phase 2 participate in facilitating the improvements and financing those?
Sure. That's basically, if it's for a farm, we can help finance that. The indoor arena is one of those projects we probably do over maybe a 15, even a 20-year amortization on a length of a loan for something like that. What we'd be doing, again, getting some of that same information, depends upon how fresh that information is. Say they just bought the farm, we're looking at where the equity position also would be as far as that's concerned, and helping to put that loan together for that. But it would really be a lot of the same information would be required, and how we would go through like a construction loan process for putting in that arena. We've done lots of them. I've done the footing for arenas before. I've done fencing. You name it for a farm, we've done that. I think that's a standard request, just like putting up any other type of barn building is the way I would look at that as far as that, putting that together to help somebody out. Getting the basic background information, might be an updated balance sheet, some tax return information, and then we go from there. And one of the things might be that riding arena is going to increase your income a lot, because you can either increase your board, you're going to charge for the use of that, and all that information can go into projections as to help with the return or help with the cash flow to pay for that riding arena.
That was a great question, Tracy. Thank you for asking that. We did have a question come into the chat that says, I know this is focused on Maryland, but can you speak to any differences between buying a farmette in Virginia versus Maryland? And that would probably go to both of you in terms of some of that early on planning and the financing.
Yeah, and I think, again, working with someone local, obviously, and I think that Farm Credit, Keith will probably touch on this, but I know they have offices there. So I guess if the question is, what are the differences? I really think there are probably none. I mean, all these rules are really going to apply uh, to really any geographic area. I would assume that Virginia, like Maryland, has a lot of information regarding zoning and such online. One thing I didn't mention earlier is there's no hard and fast rule that applies to each county. Each county in Maryland has its own zoning limitations, regulations, requirements, things like that. So I'd recommend, looking those up online if you find a property in a particular area. And again, I would just imagine that's the same in Virginia. So it's about working with someone local and understanding their local limitations and requirements.
Yeah, there's not gonna be a whole lot of difference, but I don't think on the financing side either on that. And I know depending upon where in Virginia, we obviously have some offices in our footprint that are in Virginia. But we have the offices down there, they're going to be doing the financing for farms. That's, what we do in that respect, whether it's, I just passed someone that was looking a lead to Farm Credit in Ohio this afternoon before this call. And, to pass that information, I know it's going to be probably 90% the same information that I would give them. They're going to be giving them, whether it's Virginia, Ohio, wherever, it's going to be the same. But I don't see any real or major differences, other than, like Tracy mentioned, the zoning, that those are all going to be the very local changes. But the overall picture of acquiring it, no, I don't think it's going to be any different.
Thank you. Crystal made the comment that Farm Credit is funding solar panels to put on the barn and garage. So yeah, funding for and financing for those kinds of projects after the initial purchase of the property itself is definitely something that you can contact them to get more information about. If there's any other questions, please go ahead and put them in the chat. I don't want to miss anything that someone might have. And we are kind of winding down the time that we have available. So if you have a question, please go ahead and throw it in there. And while we give folks a few minutes to do that, my sort of final ending question for each of you, I think, we'll ask each of the three of you, would be, what would be your biggest piece of advice that you would want to leave our participants with today, people that are really starting to think that this is something they might like to do? We'll start with Keith. We'll start with you since you're on.
Okay. Biggest piece of advice. If you're coming to us, to a lender, to invest in a property with you, make sure you have all your information organized. Make sure you have the information together. We'll provide you with a checklist of information if you don't. But again, what you're trying to do is to sell me on your dream. And you want to be able to present yourself and your plan in its best light, in its best position, and its strongest position. And you're going to do that through the organization of your documentation, having that all together, doing that research on that to have, so you know what you're going to need and what the requirements may be. Almost all this information is out there already. You can obtain that information on what you'll need. Gather that up, put it together, and someone comes into my office and says, "Hey, here's what I want to do. Here's a book, or here's all my information." Like that already, I've got a really positive position that they've done their background, their due diligence. They're serious about this. This is not an idea they woke up this morning and thought about.
Great, thank you. Before I hear from Crystal and Tracy on that, we did have a couple questions come in, or comments and questions. One is, Tracy touched on this, but if I could reiterate, zoning is key. For example, if you plan to build a tenant house for help, it's very different in the Ag Reserve in Montgomery County, Maryland, than it might be in Loudoun or Prince William County in Virginia. So yeah, zoning, even in terms of what kinds of business and horses or homes and horses you might want to have, is very different even within areas of a county here in Maryland. I think zoning is one of your main things that you would be needing to research. And then our other question that came in is, can people get in a bind with the lender if they say they're purchasing the farm for personal use and then take on boarders or turn it into a business?
Typically, once the loan has already been approved and put together, I don't think it's going to be so much from the lender's aspect that you may have problems. It may be, depending upon what that, going back on, I hate to say it, that zoning issue could be the one that's going to be potentially more of a problem. A lot of times, if it's a mortgage loan with somebody, it's a mortgage, we do it and put it out there. Unless they're going to be coming back in, or we're going to be reaching out to them from time to time just to see what's going on, see if anything else is needed. If they change their plans, we're not going to know a great deal about that if they take on boarders or anything. And that's really fine if they do. They're maximizing the usage of the property.
Great, thank you for that. That was a really good question. We've had lots of good questions today. So Tracy, what would be your one big piece of advice that you would want to leave our listeners with today?
I would say mine is extremely simple. Allow yourself time for this process. Don't wait until you're in a situation where you may need to make some rash decisions. He said it several times. I've mentioned it, the financing being your first critical step in the process. Allow yourself time. Again, a year is not too soon to start that phase of it. Allow yourself time to prepare your property to sell if you have that to sell. Allow yourself time to find the appropriate property so you're not settling on something that isn't really the dream. So I'd say that more than anything. And as part of that time, you can do so much soul searching and homework yourself by looking online. It's not hard to find properties now and do a little window shopping. Obviously through the equity, there's always lots of great ads in there. Learn about what you really want. And again, time is it. Allow yourself the time.
Thank you. And Crystal, I'm going to ask you to answer that too. As someone who has been through this process and found their dream farm and managed to get from beginning to end the whole way through, what would be the biggest piece of advice you would have for folks that are thinking about starting that today? Oh, let me make sure you're unmuted. Might be my fault.
I have two pieces of advice. First of all, make sure you align yourself with a realtor who has experience buying and selling horse properties. Not just a realtor who has horses, not a realtor who has listed one or sold one here or there, but who has a strong track record, because you need that realtor is going to be your Sherpa to guide you through this process. And obviously I'm a bit prejudiced, but the equity is a good place to start. Regular, experienced horse farm realtors are regular advertisers in the equity. So that's a good place to start. My second piece of advice is, so your realtor is your Sherpa, pick the right one. And the next piece of advice is your relationship with your lender. Your relationship with your lender is going to last probably beyond the purchase of the farm. Be prepared to show your lender everything about your financial life. And this can be hard for people because they're afraid they're going to be judged. Your farm credit loan officer is not there to judge you. They are there to work with you to help you develop your plan. But that can be hard, and people don't want to show their mistakes. They don't want to show, oh, I did that, I should have done this, or give them everything. They're going to figure it out anyway. So just give they show them your dirty underwear. So they're going to be there to help you with this process, and they're going to be your partner. I bought this farm almost 20 years ago, and you know, we're putting in the solar panels now. It's a lifetime relationship. So, and be prepared for that, and be okay with that.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for participating with us today. This has been a really great webinar. I think everyone's learned some really valuable information. I think we've gotten a lot of questions answered, and I just can't thank you enough for all being a part of this presentation and helping us wrap up our part of Maryland's Horse Month and our series of webinars this way. I think we've really tried to come from the beginning of just trying to find a place to ride, and then all the way to being ready to actually start looking for your own horse property with this series. And we're glad to end with the three of you helping us today. Thank you to all of you that participated. I do want to see if I can share a final screen. What we had, let me see if, oh, it's not going to show. Of course, everything's going to show a little wonky for us today, but you can see some of those additional resource links about the cost share programs there that Tracy wanted to share. And we'll definitely make sure that all of the links that were mentioned today get listed in the description of the video when we post it to our YouTube channel. And again, please feel free to go there to see this video and the others that we have as part of this series and other informational videos that we've put together. University of Maryland Horse Extension on YouTube. You can find us there, subscribe, and you'll get a notification of when each new video is being posted. So yeah, I'll make sure all of these links that we've shared today, contact information is there if you have further questions. Certainly hope you'll contact me or contact one of our presenters today and let them answer those for you if there's something that we didn't get to today or something that those of you that may be watching this recording later have. We certainly want to help you as you move forward on your own journey through this. So again, thank you all so much for being a part of this today. We really appreciate our presenters. We appreciate the Equerry and the Maryland Horse Council for being a part of putting this together, and all of you who joined in. Have a great week, and we look forward to joining you later with some new programming. So stay tuned.
Thank you.
Thank you all.